This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also, for the most part, unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 25th time ever, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reviewing Network Live, your weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I talk about the events of the past week, the news stories of the past week, and the box office recommendations. You heard the disclaimer beforehand. I will say, though, this week is not a very interesting news week, and there were a couple of news stories that we will talk about here. One big one in particular, but some other ones that I kind of had to scramble to figure out if I wanted to cover them or not, but we'll get to those in a little bit here. But I gave you the disclaimer early, so sit back, relax, and let's begin the conversation. And as per usual on the show, we begin with the weekend box office, which has a lot of interesting things to delve into here, and some not surprising things in particular, especially considering that one of the movies on here is another one of the movies that will be definitely a contender for one of the worst movies of the year. We'll get to that one when we get to that one. Let's start with number 5 on the list of this weekend box office, and these are the numbers before you account for President's Day weekend. In fact, let me see if the numbers are there. They're there for some of them, so I won't bring up ones that are not currently in the current top 5 box office right now on the Box Office Mojo, because that's usually where I go to get the numbers here. But for the regular weekend, number 5 on the list is The Chosen Season 4, Episodes 4 through 6. 1 through 3 had been out for a couple weeks beforehand. 4, 5, and 6 came out this weekend. $3.4 million, $4.2 million in total from its days opening on Wednesday. I think Wednesday or Thursday. Thursday. It opened up on Thursday. So add in Thursday's numbers, $4.2 million. Again, don't really know too much about these chosen things. I've never been to one of them before, but they make money even though they don't really get a whole lot of marketing outside of the theaters, so good for them. I mean, not much more I can say about that one, honestly. So anyway, let's move on to number 5. Number 4 this week, excuse me. This was number 5 last week, and that is Migration, still hanging in there and actually gained from last weekend too. $3.8 million, up 27% from last week, basically about 28%, 27.7%. Brought in $114.8 million after 9 weeks. It's already over $250 million worldwide. That and Wonka moved up from last week. Wonka is down out of the top 5 at 6 with $3.4 million, $209 million in total. So, yeah, family films, 2 family films from the holiday season hanging in there because there's really been nothing else to combat them, and more than likely there's not going to be any big ones until maybe Kung Fu Panda 4 coming out on March 8th, or maybe even Dune Part 2 on March 1st, depending on what the audience for that will be like. But that brings us to number 3, which was the number 1 movie last week, and that is Argylle, which brought in $4.7 million, had its smallest drop-off yet, $24.5 million, 24.5%, excuse me, $36.7 million domestically, worldwide gross up to $77.3 million. This thing cost $200 million. It ain't making its money back anytime soon. Nor will the number 2 movie, which brings us into the new releases this week, the number 2 movie this week, and that is, of course, Madam Web, which is Sony's latest attempt to create a Spider-Man shared universe without hardly mentioning Spider-Man. At least in the past they tried to do that, but this one is just like, I don't know what they were thinking here. This one was not. They tried to bring it in there, but it didn't work out for them. Madam Web brought in $15.1 million for the 3-day weekend. Add in Wednesday and Thursday because it's open up on Valentine's Day. $23.3 million. The President's Day estimates for this is It's $25.8 million for the 6-day start for this, which the budget on this movie was $80 million, and it's already at $49 million worldwide, so I don't know, I guess it's going to make its budget back at least, but nobody at Sony should be happy about this whatsoever. I mean, the way this movie was marketed, and the way this movie was sold to people is you keep hearing the stories about what Dakota Johnson was talking about on the press junket for this, and nobody really knows what the hell she was talking about. I mean, she literally called the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies completely different titles than what they actually were, and there's been the whole thing about conspiracy theories, misconstructed quotes to create this narrative that Johnson hated her own movie, and I don't really think anyone could blame her for that, but like this thing is just like, this is one of those fascinating things where Dakota Johnson has been placed under a lot of scrutiny for this, and I'm reading a story off of the Hollywood Reporter, because they did a story about the press tour, and they're talking about how she basically says that, you know, websites ran with the headlines, Dakota Johnson doubts Madam Web will be good, or Dakota Johnson says making Madam Web was absolutely psychotic, and every negative variation of the headlines that you could think of. And it's clear she's talking about how she's never been part of the acting process like this, and doesn't know if her performance will be good in terms of working with these unfamiliar elements. And in many cases, the following sentences of those quotes, in which Johnson praises Clarkson, the director of the movie, S.J. Clarkson, were conveniently omitted, as they didn't fit the story the writer or website wanted to convey. That the narrative that Johnson hated being in Madam Web caught fire, and as increasingly headline-driven culture, readers and other entertainment journalists latched onto the idea, finding that their own threads to spin into a narrative bullet or nothing. But, I mean, the way you look, no matter how you look at it, it's clear that Dakota Johnson clearly did not want to be involved in this movie, and, you know, for movies like this, you have to, it's hard, but you have to try to sell the movie until the time is up, like, until that time comes when you can finally start talking shit about it. I mean, everybody does that, but she did not do herself any favors when talking about this movie, when you can't even get the right names to the Spider-Man movies that Tom Holland was in, and tried to use that as an excuse for why you should go see this movie. Like you can't really take away from Dakota Johnson at fault for this, because she agreed to this. She said she was going to be in this movie, and she did. And like, I don't know, man. Like I said before in my review for this, she really needs to fire her agent that she has right now, and basically get somebody else who can actually get her some good scripts, because ever since she left Ben and Kate, it's been nothing but 50 Shades of Grey, all those movies, which, yeah, it made your name, but it really just showed you how, it really just showed how much your acting is not really making a whole lot of difference, but is your star power really isn't making a whole lot of difference when you keep taking one bad movie after another. She's been in good movies. The Social Network was a great movie. 21 Jump Street was a great movie. Need for Speed was a fun movie. Not a big hit, but it was a fun movie. How to Be Single was a good movie. Bad Times at the El Royale, The Peanut Butter Falcon. She's been in good movies, but starring in a movie like Madam Web, when you know how bad it is, and it's just like you should have known all along. And Sony really is at fault for this for the most part, because they tried so hard to sell this movie just on the fact that, hey, Morbius was a meme juggernaut for us. We got to do it again with Madam Web. And this movie tries to be so meme-ish and fails so miserably at it, and it's sickening. Like, it's really like the marketing, like the social media post that Sydney Sweeney did for this, where she was in costume. That was more time she was in costume than she was in the actual movie. That should tell you something, that should tell you everything you need to know about this movie. It's just like, the thing with Morbius was a meme movie, but it was a so bad it was good meme movie. This movie is so bad, it's just bad. It goes way too dark, it's trying to be too serious for its own good, and it just fails miserably on so many different levels. And the worst part about it is, we're not even out of the woods yet, because we have not one, but 2 more movies of this year. Venom 3 is coming out in November, and before that, we have Kraven the Hunter, which had a trailer come out last year, because everyone thought, including myself, that was coming out in the fall of 2023, but of course the actor strike said otherwise. And I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look great either. It looks like a movie that's just kind of going to be on the same level as something like I don't know. Like, it feels like it's going to be try to do the same thing that Morbius that they were trying to do with Madam Web. It's just, it could be good, but I'm not really getting my hopes up on that one, really, because, and again, that's Ariana DeBose in there, too. Another actress who really needs to fire her friggin' agent, because every movie she's been in since West Side Story has been either a bomb or a terrible movie. Like, seriously, get people who are going to give you good movies to work on that will become things that will actually show what your talent is capable of. I can say the same thing for Sydney Sweeney, too, but Anyone But You was a big hit, shockingly. And, yeah, she was in this movie, too, so, but, yeah, maybe you do need to fire your agent, too, as well, Sydney. Like, just fire your agents and get ones who are actually going to give you good scripts to work off of. But yeah, Madam Web, not a big hit, and probably will be gone once we get to next week as well, especially the week after that with Dune Part 2 coming out. I keep saying Dune Chapter 2, but let's get to the number one movie this weekend, and the number one movie this weekend is Bob Marley, One Love, which brought in $27.7 million, and adding the 5-day grosses from Valentine's Day, $45.5 million, taking the 6-day total, it's up to $51 million. And I think the budget on this movie was relatively small. Let me see if I can find it here, because I know it couldn't have been that expensive. It was a little more expensive than I thought it would be, $70 million, but, you know, $74.6 million worldwide. It's already made $51 million of that here domestically, so it's going to do fine at the box office. And Paramount Pictures, man, you know, there's a lot of their movies have not been that great. Some of them have not been that enjoyable, but they're making the money. A lot of their movies that they put out have been #1 hits. And, you know, Mean Girls, we just had that a couple weeks ago. And then Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. I mean, Mission Impossible has still continue to be a big hit. They're making hit movies, even though, you know, not a lot of them have been great. And Bob Marley, One Love is definitely another one of those movies that really does feel like it's not as great as it probably should be. And I say this because it was kind of the same problem I talked about before in my review for it. It's a PG-13 rated movie, so it's going to be a biopic, but it's going to be a biopic that it could go either way. It could be another one. It could be something like a Ray or Walk the Line, where it works with the PG-13 rating while not afraid to tell a story that is very interesting and very intriguing about the person involved. Or it could be another Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, or Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's just a safe, sanitized movie. And unfortunately, that's what this movie is to me. I really was disappointed going into it, knowing it was going to get a PG-13 rating. And I really was hoping that I'd be wrong about it when I came out of it. But sadly, I was really disappointed by this movie. The performances, I thought, carried it all the way through. I thought Kingsley Ben-Adir and LaShawn Lynch did a very good job playing Bob Marley and his wife. But as far as the movie itself goes, I really thought the movie was just a generic biopic, and it really let me down in terms of, like, telling an intriguing story, telling a story that actually isn't something that's so safe and marketable. But then again, half the Marley family is the producer on this. Do you think they're going to let their son be chastised for some of the stuff they did in this movie? Hell no. I mean, that's the same thing with Bohemian Rhapsody. It's produced by the guys behind Queen. Like, you think they want to tell the true story of Freddie Mercury? I don't think so. Like, nobody really has the balls to do what Rocket Man did with Elton John. Like, Elton John wasn't afraid to tell his story, but do it in a way that seems very much different and actually was very unique for its own time. More movies should be doing stuff like that, and unfortunately, nobody's really doing that. And sadly, that it just shows that more people want to use the Bohemian Rhapsody method of making musical biopics instead of actually telling a legitimate story. That's why I'm really worried about the Michael Jackson movie that they're working on with Antoine Fuqua directing it. I mean, a great director, and you got Michael Jackson's nephew there to play him, but it's written by the same guy that did Bohemian Rhapsody, so of course they're not going to go deep into the heavy stuff with Michael Jackson. I mean, why would they? Because who wants to hear about all that stuff in a movie? And why is it condensed down to one movie? Make it more than one movie. It's just like, there's so much going on in the story of Michael Jackson that it needed to be more than one movie. And I think trying to cram it into one singular film hurts the movie, and hurts that film in particular. But it's still a year out, so we'll see what happens on that front. But other than that, though, yeah, Bob Marley, One Love. I really wish I could have came out of there with a much better optimistic look at it, but Sadly, I could not, unfortunately. So, yeah, Bob Marley, One Love. It's the #1 movie, so the audience for this is interesting. The critical reviews for this were not that great, but the audience reactions for it were really good. And I don't usually like to, like I said, I don't usually like to go to Rotten Tomatoes to do the averages on this. But let me see where did there it is. Yeah, it's got a 43% right now on Rotten Tomatoes, but a 94% of audiences like the movie. So it does have a loyal following to it. It does have a following to it, and I think that will be more than enough to keep it sticking around in the box office for a little bit. So maybe not too long, because of course Dune comes out in a couple weeks. But next week is a very slow week. The big new release that's coming out is the Ethan Coen film Drive Away Dolls, which I'm kind of curious to check that one out. But we also have Tenet getting a re-release too. So like, I thought maybe I'd go check that out again. That was actually the first movie I went to see after the COVID pandemic ended. So I'm really curious to see how those two are going to pan out. How that's going to pan out. I'm definitely going to see Drive Away Dolls. I haven't decided yet on Tenet yet. Maybe I'll see if it plays around here. But yeah, look for the Drive Away Dolls review coming up next week, which will probably not do well, considering that it kind of has the same thing going on that Lisa Frankenstein did last week. But could turn out to be a really good movie in the long run when it's all said and done. So with that said, that's the weekend box office. So let's go ahead and get into some news stories. So like I said before, there was not really a whole lot of big news stories to cover this particular week. It was actually kind of a slow news week. And I thought about going back to some stories from the previous week, like the news about Jurassic Park. They had David Leitch as a director, and now he's off the project because apparently he wants to do something different with the Jurassic Park franchise. Meanwhile, Universal is just like, no, you got to do it the same way we did before. And it's just like, okay, this isn't going to work. So, still coming out next summer. So, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But there was one big news story that came out this week, kind of ending the speculation that we've had for a number of years now about a specific project that Marvel Studios has been working on. And what better way to release this storyline than on Valentine's Day? So Marvel Studios finally has unveiled the official Fantastic Four cast. So the announcement is that Pedro Pascal is going to play Reed Richards. That was something that was kind of already known, but now this has been made official. And now also made official, Vanessa Kirby from Mission Impossible is going to be playing Sue Storm / The Invisible Woman. Joseph Quinn, who's going to be seen next in A Quiet Place Day 1, is going to play her brother, Johnny Storm, in The Human Torch. And Eben Mass-Bacarach from The Bear is going to be Ben Grimm, of course, also known as The Thing, which I found this very interesting. He's going to be the first Jewish person to play The Thing, because most people forget The Thing is Jewish. I mean, The Thing is, Ben Grimm is a Jewish character, and I never knew about this, but you can thank Variety for letting us know about that, because they were the one that actually posted the story about how The Thing Ben Grimm was a Jewish character. But the casting caps years of speculation over who might play the team, as the movie is now set for a July 25th, 2025 release date, and it's come from the director Matt Shankman, who did WandaVision, and it's very fitting because WandaVision takes a lot of homage to 60s television, 60s shows in particular, and that brings me to the little photo that they decided to put out for Valentine's Day, because they decided to put out a picture of the cast with this Valentine's Day looking photo that looks like it's from the 1960s, which leads to a lot of speculation that this is going to take place in the 60s as a period piece, which coincidentally, the director Peyton Reed, who would go on to direct the Ant movie, was actually in talks to direct a 60s era Fantastic Four film, which eventually was dropped for a standard Fantastic Four film, the one that starred Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Michael Chiklis, and Ioan Gruffudd. But as far as the casting goes, it kind of fits into where I think everybody should be fitting themselves into. I think Pedro Pascal is a good choice for Mr. Fantastic. Vanessa Kirby is a great actress. I think she fits the role of Sue Storm very well. Eben Mass-Bacarach is a guy I've been really getting to like over the last couple of years, not just for The Bear, but he was in No Hard Feelings. I think he's great. I think he's a great choice to play Ben. But Joseph Quinn is a guy that I'm not too familiar with. I haven't seen a lot of his work before, but he is, of course, on Stranger Things, and he has Gladiator 2 and A Quiet Place Day 1 coming up. So, I'll get to know more about him later on, but I do like the image that they put up on here. It's an image of, you know, the entire Fantastic Four crew just sitting there. You know, Ben's reading, the Thing is reading a magazine from the 1960s. You see a picture of Buzz, I think it's Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin on the top there. I could be wrong on that, but, and the robot's there too. The robot from the comics is there too. So maybe this is a period piece film, which I think would be very cool. It would be a very interesting approach to take for this, and I think for Marvel in general, they really need to spice things up a little bit here. We're going to talk more about what Marvel needs to do later on, because the Deadpool and Wolverine had the trailer come out last week, and I think that's going to be very important to the Marvel Studios series going forward, of where they go from here, because it's obvious things need to change, need to be spiced up a little bit here, but I'll talk about that as we go along here. But we got the cast for the Fantastic Four: Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Evan Mass-Bacarach, and Joseph Quinn. That'll come out next July, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out. And I do like the way they basically decided to announce it on Valentine's Day with this really cool-looking image here. And I think it looks pretty cool, so I think it's a good-looking cast. So let's go ahead and move on to some other stories I want to cover here. So there was another big story that came out on Friday that... I mean, it's a story that's very interesting, but it's mostly because I want to talk, as I'm not going to talk about the story in particular, because I kind of want to talk about the person involved in the storyline, because I feel like we need to talk about this director and how I think a lot of people are giving him way too much credit than he actually gets, but the story goes, Ridley Scott is set to direct a movie about the Bee Gees. The filmmaker is in talks to direct an untitled movie centering around music group the Bee Gees. Scott, whose last movie in theaters was Napoleon, is producing alongside Graham King, Stacey Snider, and Michael Pruis. Scott's Gladiator scribe John Logan will pen the script. Scott is currently in post on Gladiator 2 for Paramount, which comes out later this year. The British-Australian trio the Bee Gees became one of the top-selling music acts of all time, rising to fame in the 1960s and 70s. Gibb brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice were behind hits such as How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, Too Much Heaven, Nights on Broadway, and Staying Alive. Barry Gibb, the only surviving brother, will executive produce the film. Paramount is distributing, with Amblin and sister having the right to co-finance. A number of filmmakers have taken a stab at the project over the years, with Lorraine Scafaria boarding in late 2022 and after the exit of John Carney. The move comes as Paramount releases Bob Marley One Love, despite soft reviews and an A cinema score from audiences that scored a strong Valentine's Day gross. This, of course, the story took place before the box office numbers came out, but so Ridley Scott's doing a Bee Gees movie, which I'm okay with, honestly, but I mean, a Bee Gees movie could be very interesting to see, but then again, it could be one of those things where it's just like, is it going to be Bob Marley One Love again? Is it going to be Whitney Houston again? Is it going to be, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody? Is it going to be one of those biopics where it plays it too safe? It's only there to be safe and marketable for the audience, for the families to come in and see it. I mean, it's tough to say at this point, but I'll give it the benefit of a doubt. But honestly, that kind of delves into what I really wanted to talk about with this story, and that is that I don't think Ridley Scott's that great of a director anymore. He was a great director in the beginning. I mean, he made a lot of classic films. Alien, you know, Blade Runner, Black Rain, Thelma and Louise, you know, G.I. Jane's a criminally underrated movie. So is Matchstick Men, Black Hawk Down, American Gangster, The Martian. A lot of great movies here, but in between American Gangster and now, he's been more missed than hit. And I think a lot of people give him way too much credit and way too much praise than he should be getting, because let's be honest, a lot of his movies are not that good. I mean, in between American Gangster and now, and Napoleon, these are the movies he's done. Body of Lies, which was a decent film. I thought it was actually better than a lot of people give that credit for. Robin Hood, which was absolutely horrible. Prometheus, which was one of those movies that was a self-congratulatory movie because Ridley Scott's returning to aliens again, and like we got to praise him just for that, instead of actually looking at the movie and realizing that there is a lot more flaws to it than the people who actually who say they like the film actually don't want to admit. The Counselor, which was just a bizarre movie on a number of different levels. Exodus: Gods and Kings, which was just a dull movie with Christian Bale and who else was in there? Joel Edgerton as Moses and Ramesses, and that was a complete disaster on a number of levels. Alien Covenant, because hey, Ridley Scott's back to doing aliens again, and that was even and that made it even worse than Prometheus. All the money in the world was not that great of a movie. I'm one of the few people that really didn't like The Last Duel. I really did not like that movie. Everybody was going crazy for it. All I could think of was, oh wow, it's the medieval Me Too movie, because heaven forbid we need to bring the Me Too movement into a medieval period piece. Like, get the fuck out of here with that. The House of Gucci, which I was one of the few people that liked that movie, but mostly for the campiness of it. I mean, the silliest moments in that movie with Jared Leto, I mean, my God, like, there's one scene in particular where he's about to cry the top of his lungs, and as soon as he starts to cry, it's the sound of a car horn, and it's one of the most bizarre, awkward transitions to another scene that I have ever seen. But I thought Lady Gaga was good in it, and Napoleon, I was really let down by that one, because Napoleon didn't know what kind of a tone it wanted to set. Did it want to be a serious movie, or did it want to be a comedy? Like, Ridley Scott tried to do both at the same time, and it didn't work. And honestly, I don't think Ridley Scott's that good of a director anymore. Like, I think that he should be credited for the stuff that he did that changed the game. Alien, Blade Runner, those are great movies that have held up over time, and have really shown what true potential, what true greatness he is as a director. But since then, he has really been making one major letdown after another. The best movie he's made since American Gangster came out, which was his last great film, was The Martian. And that was a great movie, too. Matt Damon was great in that film, based off of a great book as well. And it worked because he had a good story to work off of, and it showed what Ridley Scott can still do, what Ridley Scott can do best with it as a director. Like, it was a perfectly set film for him. But that's one good movie out of, what? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 movies. I mean, 1 out of 10 is not good. In between American Gangster and Napoleon, like I don't know. Like, to me, I just don't get excited for Ridley Scott movies anymore, because he's basically just a safe director. Like, he could make whatever movie and people will go crazy for it because, hey, Ridley Scott's directing. Yet even though he's not doing anything to challenge himself as a director, like, Steven Spielberg is still making movies where he's challenging himself as a director, and like, yeah, they're not the biggest hits, but he's still showing that he still knows what he's doing. I mean, Martin Scorsese does the exact same thing. Even a guy like Robert Zemeckis, who was trying to do something different with those stop motion, with those CG movies he made in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Not all of them were great, but it showed that he was willing to do something unique and different to get his name still mentioned out there, even if the movies didn't end up being that great. But Ridley Scott, it just feels like he's making the same movie over and over and over again, and it's just they're just passable. They're passable movies. Like, a guy like Wes Anderson can make that work, because Wes Anderson has that unique edge to himself that, yeah, he could tell the same story and have the same characters in each movie, but he has a different visual style to it that can make it stand out. That way, you could still, if you really like his movies a lot, you could still really get invested in it. Because I still get invested in Wes Anderson films. I still get invested in Woody Allen movies. A lot of Woody Allen movies are the same way too. I mean, even Spike Lee has made movies that have been very much similar to one another, but at times he'll challenge himself to make something unique and different, and it leads to such great movies as of late. Like, Inside Man was a great movie. You know, Miracle at St. Anna was a great movie. Black Klansman was a fantastic movie. And, I mean, just to me, to me, Ridley Scott, I don't really think he has that director's edge that he had back in the day. Like, he doesn't have that spark that he does to challenge himself. He just wants to make the same movies that he's made for the last 15 years, and hope one day one of them's going to get him to that upper echelon that he wants to get to. But really, like, this is a guy that I think can really do something different and so unique if he's given a chance to do, if he actually gets a really good script to work off of here. And I don't think that he's really getting invested in that. I really think he's just borderline sticking with what he knows best, because he knows that's what's going to make him the most money. But to me personally, I just want to see him do something. I want him to challenge himself more. I want to see him do more projects that are so different for him that he would usually be doing. I don't want to see another Gladiator movie. I don't want to see Napoleon again. I don't want to see a movie where you're trying to take something modern and bring it into a period piece like The Last Duel. I want to see I don't want you going back to Alien again Again, just doing the same thing that you did with the original Alien movie and nothing different. Give me something new that I haven't seen done before. I mean, seriously. Why is that so hard for Ridley Scott to figure out? I mean, I don't know if someone's telling him to do it this way, but I don't know. Me personally, I'm not looking forward to Gladiator 2. I'm not looking forward to that. I don't really look forward to Ridley Scott movies anymore because I know that he's not that same director that I grew up loving back in the day. Like Black Hawk Down and Matchstick Men were the first real movies I ever saw him as a director for, and then Alien, Blade Runner later came down the road, and I realized this guy's a really good director. And then American Gangster comes along, and it's like, wow, where has this guy been? And yeah, like American Gangster was the last before The Martian, American Gangster was the last great film I saw him direct before The Martian came out. But still, that's 1 out of 10 movies since American Gangster came out, and between that and Napoleon. But I mean, I don't know. Me personally, I'm just not excited for Ridley Scott movies anymore. Maybe the Bee Gees will be that one. Maybe that will be the one where Ridley Scott gets the keys to say, from Paramount, to say, hey, do whatever you want. We want you to be that great director again. But knowing that, he'll probably just do the same thing he's done over the last 10 movies. So, I don't know. We'll see. I hope it's not the case, but I don't know. But anyway, let's move on to the next story. So about 10 years ago, there was a show on Comedy Central that was on after The Daily Show and The Colbert Report called At Midnight. And it starred Chris Hardwick, who was, of course, at the time, he was everywhere. I mean, not just on Comedy Central, but he was also doing shows for NBC, did the Talking Dead show for AMC for a number of years. Pretty much everywhere. I mean, this guy had a stake in Legendary Pictures. It's funny, every time a new Legendary Pictures film came out, I was just kind of like, man, it must be great to be Chris Hardwick today when he finds out a new Legendary Picture comes out, because he's getting at least some of the shares from that company. I don't know if he still does or not, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if he still has it. I actually don't know if he still owns still a part of a stake of Legendary Pictures, but he does still show up a lot, and I do like Chris Hardwick a lot. I think he's a very funny guy, and he had a show on there called At Midnight, where that was a show that was perfectly fit for a style of comedy, where you have 3 guests competing in a series of internet-themed improv games. You have games like Rapid Refresh. There's a game called Panderdome, which they did during the presidential primaries of 2016. There'd be games like Life Challenges, and the game basically was kind of the Twitter equivalent to something like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they give out points, but the points really don't matter when it's all said and done, and the winner basically wins the internet for the next 23 and a half hours. So it was a great show. It used to be a show I used to watch a lot on Comedy Central, but unfortunately it ended in 2017. And but since then it has returned as a new show over at CBS, because they have finally found a show to replace the Late Late Show with James Corden, and it's this reboot of At Midnight. And on this new version of At Midnight is an hour long. The original At Midnight was a half hour long. But this show in particular now has Stephen Colbert producing through his company, and it's now hosted by Taylor Tomlinson. And I'll get to her in just a second here, but kind of like with At Midnight, the format is pretty much the same. You have a panel of 3 celebrity guests as contestants. They participate in topical segments related to pop culture and social media to earn points from the host for their responses and punchlines. In addition to new several games, they retain a lot of the same core segments, like Rapid Refresh is now called Group Chat. There's a thing called Hashtag Wars and For the Win, which was in the original show. The winner receives a gag prize this time around, which may be tangible or imaginary, such things like old ketchup packets from Taylor Tomlinson's refrigerator, a damaged office chair, Tomlin's father's approval, an extra year of life. The player in last place is subjected to a humorous punishment, such as being forced to give an apology speech or being sent to horny jail. One prize was an alleged haunted doll that was originally gifted to Tomlinson from her brother, and was returned by the winner and rewarded to someone else on a later episode. And it's pretty much the same thing that I loved about At Midnight. I mean, it's literally the same concept. It's literally the same thing, except it's now an hour longer, and it's more games going forward, and instead of Chris Hardwick, it's Taylor Tomlinson hosting it. And I never knew anything about Taylor Tomlinson before I knew about this show coming out. So when she got the hosting gig, I had no idea who she was, but she did a lot of stand-up work. She's done stuff for The Tonight Show, Conan. She was on Last Comic Standing. She was like a top 10 finalist on there. She's had a couple of Netflix specials. She had a sitcom at ABC, but never got picked up. But But this is my first exposure to her in full, and I gotta say, man, I love her style of comedy. Like, it's a little bit deadpan, but it's kind of relatable deadpan comedy. Like, she doesn't go with, like, Chris Hardwick has a lot of energy to him. She doesn't have quite that same energy, but in the same vein, that's what I kind of like about it. Like, you could definitely tell that she knows exactly what she needs to do to make the audience laugh, and it works very well. I think she fits that show's mold very well here. I think they do a phenomenal job of giving her an outlet to show what she can do as a comedian, and she's really good on the show. It's a really funny show in particular. Like, it's a show I've really grown to like over the last couple of weeks. I just actually started watching it when it was on after the Super Bowl last week, and then I went to go look for some older episodes. And I will say the first couple of episodes, they were kind of slow, but then again, it's a new late night show. It's a new late night show where, of course, you're going to have some... It's going to start off slow, but it depends on how you do over the coming days and weeks. Can you find your momentum going forward? And sure enough, the show eventually does find its momentum, and it really has become something that I've been kind of watching a lot recently. It's after midnight, of course, after midnight, but it's a really funny show, and I do like that they have a lot of good, very talented people on the show. Like, they've had, Aparna Nancherla from The Great North. Whitney Cummings was on the first episode as well. Max Greenfield from New Girl. Melania Von Traub, Lily from the AT&T commercials. Doug Benson, Natasha Leggero, John Daly, Sashir Zameda, Matt Walsh, Jerry O'Connell, Kel Mitchell, Thomas Lennon. I mean, they get a good assortment of big stars there. I mean, big funny names on that show, and it works very well. It's a really good show. It's a really solid, very entertaining show on a number of different levels. I mean, I'm not going to say it's as funny as the original At Midnight is, but it's still very entertaining on its own merits. It does its own thing, but it's also very reminiscent of what it used to be back in the day. I definitely do recommend it. If you haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, watch it on CBS. It's on after The Late Show, or watch it on Paramount Plus, because it definitely is worth it to watch. Like, if you grew up with the original At Midnight, you'll definitely find a lot to admire about the show. It will take its time, though. Take its time if you're watching it from the beginning, and definitely check it out, because I think it is very funny. I think Taylor Tomlinson has a lot of potential as a comedic actress as a comedian going forward, I should say. Not a comedic actress, but maybe she does have a future as a comedic actress. We'll see, but this is a great outlet for her to show what she can do as a comedian. I think she's done a pretty good job of it so far, so like I said, I recommend checking it out. It's definitely worth a watch. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next story. So last week we had the Super Bowl, and there were a lot of commercials that came out, and we got a first look at several big new movies coming out this year. We got Deadpool Wolverine, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, but we also got our first look at Twisters, the sequel that clearly everybody was asking for. I mean, who doesn't want to see another another Twister sequel more than 30 years after the original film? And trick question, nobody wants to see another Twister movie. I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. Like, seriously, who wants to see a sequel to Twister? And I've already done a trailer video on this channel talking about it, so if you want to go check that out, it should be there, but I'll put a link to it down in the bottom here if you really want to go check that out. But I still have a lot to say about why this sequel is absolutely pointless. Because as you see from the trailer for it, if you saw the trailer for it, it's pretty much the same thing as every other tornado movie that was trying to be Twister after it came out. I mean, it's Into the Storm. You have this, and not only that, we're going to have to throw in these elements from Twister, Hey, Dorothy's back. We're going to put her in there again because it worked the first time, so clearly we got to make it work the second time because this movie, But on top of that, I mean, the movie basically is an update is basically a remake of the original film, and yet they're trying to sell it as a sequel. Like, it's a pair of storm chasers who risk their lives in an attempt to test an experimental weather alert system, just like the first movie, but no, they're much younger now, and, hey, Helen Hunt's not in this movie anymore because her character wanted to be killed off in the sequel, because what's the point of doing it when you can't have Bill Paxton or Helen Hunt anymore? But, I digress. And the sad part is, it features a lot of people that I do like as actors. Glenn Powell from Top Gun Maverick. You know, he was also in Anyone But You, which was a terrible movie, but I still respect him as an actor. Anthony Ramos in The Heights, you know, great movie. And Transformers Rise of the Beast, also a really fun movie. Daisy Edgar Jones, great actress from Where the Crawdads Sing, and also in Fresh. We also got the new Superman in here. David Cornset is also in this movie, so be interesting to see what he can do, since a lot of people don't know who he is. Maybe this will be a chance for him to show what he can do before he becomes Superman. But the biggest problem I have with this movie comes behind the scenes, because the writer of this movie is Mark L. Smith. And, you know, Mark L. Smith's not a bad writer. He's written some good movies. He's written The Revenant, which was a great film with Leonardo DiCaprio. Overlord, which was a really good movie, a criminally underrated film directed by Julius Avery, which was this alternate history horror film, a zombie movie, pretty much. Vacancy was kind of an underrated gem, too. So he's not a problem with this movie. That's not my problem with it. The movie's the people behind the scenes, I should say. But Lee Isaac Chung, has he directed any blockbusters of this type beforehand? No, but he directed Minari. He directed an episode of The Mandalorian, so clearly that's the only reason why we got to have him on here as a director, because he directed those things. It's just like, we're really going to do this again. Like, just because somebody has directed something else in particular doesn't mean you have to get him to direct a blockbuster film, even though they've never directed a blockbuster before. Like, there's no reason to work on this to make a sequel to Twister. Nothing about the original Twister I'm sorry, Twister does not have enough there to have a sequel put into it. It's like Independence Day all over again. Like, Independence Day was pretty much, hey, Independence Day is going to be, Independence Day Resurgence is coming. Okay, what has Roland done since Independence Day? I don't know, Godzilla, The Patriot, Day After Tomorrow, and, that was coming after Day After Tomorrow, Roland Emmerich's career took a bad nosedive. 10,000 BC. Don't need to say any more about that one, but there were some other bad ones too. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I need to check his filmography just to see. But Independence Day Resurgence was one of the most pointless sequels ever. He added nothing new to that story that needed to be told. It was a movie that he made because it was my biggest hit, and clearly people have to see another one of these because, this is part of my legacy. It's just like, yeah, you know what? You have the same problem as Ridley Scott. You're afraid to do something different, and you're stuck in the past. Like you really need to find something better to do with your life. And Roland Emmerich, unfortunately, has not done that because his last movie was Moonfall, which was him trying to just recopy Independence Day all over again. But maybe it's just because I was never a fan of the original Twister movie. I never was really like that. I never really was that guy that liked it. I put that kind of in the same category as Independence Day. It was one of those movies I never understood why it was so special. Yeah, the special effects look cool, and the movie back then sold it very well, campaign-wise. Like, they had a great marketing campaign behind it, and it got people invested to see what was going on. Yeah, but where it really fell apart is the script. It's a movie where one of the main characters is trying to make the argument that tornadoes destroy people's lives on purpose, saying, you've never seen it miss this house and miss that house and hit yours. Basically making this stupid case that tornadoes are like assassins. Like, they have this plan to destroy people's lives, but there's just one problem with that. They're unpredictable. It's hard to pinpoint what a tornado is going to hit in its path. I mean, yeah, technology has been able to really evolve with bettering the uses of the National Weather Service, but you can never predict when a tornado is going to hit which house and which building. And the whole movie's point and purpose tries to make it like the tornado is a villain, and like the tornado is a villain, but no, it's not just. We don't need to have this villain. No, we need to have Cary Elwes play a villain in this movie because he's a weatherman that doesn't play by the rules. And it's just like, shut up. I hate all these characters in the original Twister too. Like, I hate that movie so much. I can't. It's like, for 1996, when we really didn't have anything to really do with our lives, that was one of those ones where it's just like, at 96, it was probably fine, but that movie does not deserve to have a lasting legacy that it has. I mean, and this movie just does not feel like it deserves to exist. Like, there's nothing about this movie that has that same warrant of existence that the original Twister did. Like, there's nothing too significant about that. Like, nothing about this trailer worked at all. There was nothing about it that worked. The writing over is the the visual effects in here aren't that too promising. I mean, it's nothing new or different that we haven't seen in any of these other Storm movies that try to do something like this. And there's just no life to it. It just feels like there's nothing about this that's there to make this possible, except for the fact that Twister is a name brand, and we got to make a movie out of it so we can get the zeitgeist going. Maybe we'll start a new franchise for it, because hey, we're Universal. We did it with Fast and Furious, and we did it with Jurassic Park. Yeah, it works for Fast and Furious and Jurassic Park because those are franchises that you kept people invested in because you had great hooks. Jurassic Park, people love dinosaurs. Fast and Furious, people love fast cars. Twister, people don't like tornadoes. I mean, tornadoes outbreaks like that. It's like as much as you think they do. I mean, this is just. I mean, me personally, I'm really not looking forward to this one. This was one that, when I saw the trailer for it, I just knew that it was going to be a disaster from the get-go, and not much more than the actual Twisters themselves. But who knows? Maybe they'll turn it around for me, because heaven forbid that the last time we got a director who never directed a blockbuster before this. Most times that happens, it never usually pans out, but. Then again, sometimes it does, but I really doubt this is going to working out well at all. This is a movie that feels like it's really pointless. It feels like a pointless sequel on a number of levels, a pointless attempt to create a new franchise of films, because, The Hangover did that. Look at how well The Hangover's held up. Trolls did that. Fantastic Beasts did that. Make them a franchise, because people clearly want to see more of them, even though people get sick and tired of them by the second or third movie. But I don't know. That's just me personally. I'm not looking forward to Twisters whatsoever. So, and now I'm gonna get those people just like, "Oh, you're crazy, man. You're crazy. You should be giving this movie more credit than it deserves." So Twister's gonna be amazing. I'm like, okay, pal, whatever. But so let's go ahead and move on to another trailer that came out last week, which I am definitely looking forward to, and I think a lot of you people out there are as well. Obviously, the big new trailer that came out during the Super Bowl was Deadpool and Wolverine, where we got the first title, the first poster, pretty much gave us everything we wanted and then some. In a trailer where Wolverine barely shows up in it. I mean, we knew he was already going to be in it because the images were already out there of him and Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman in the Wolverine suit. Not just in the Wolverine suit, but in the Wolverine suit that looks straight from the comic books and the animated series. I mean, they didn't really need to show him in the trailer because everybody knew he was already going to be in it. So, but yeah, Deadpool is going to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the intention of this is for the character to retain the R rating of the other movies. And you know what? That's all I gotta say, man. Applause to Disney, applause to Marvel Studios for realizing that you cannot do a PG-13 Deadpool movie. I mean, not only did Deadpool prove how successful an R-rated superhero movie can be, but Wolverine himself also proved how successful an R-rated movie can be with Logan, which was the best movie of 2017. So, yeah. It's not surprising at all that it seems like they're going down the route that we want them to go down. We want them to do... This is something that the MCU really needs right now because, the last couple of years have been rough on them. I mean, it's hard not to say this, but as somebody who likes the MCU a lot, I even have to admit that ever since the COVID-19 pandemic happened, the MCU has kind of fallen on bad terms. I mean, right after Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man No Way Home, or Spider-Man Far From Home, excuse me, since we got to Phase 4, it's been more missed than hit. I mean, there's been a couple of good things from the MCU here and there. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was a good movie. Spider-Man No Way Home was great. So was Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I really like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and I like Thor Love and Thunder. I know a lot of people didn't. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was great. The Marvels, not so much. Then you had Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Black Widow, Eternals, some Disney Plus shows that were pretty good. WandaVision was great. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel was fun. I like She-Hulk. I like Werewolf by Night. I like Guardians of the Galaxy. But then you also had Secret Invasion, which was one of the worst shows from last year for obvious reasons. But needless to say, yeah, the MCU is currently in some trouble right now, and I'm not gonna lie. Deadpool and Wolverine needs to be the thing that shows everybody that the MCU is willing to do something completely outside of its norm. Like, the fact that it's going to be an R-rated sequel, the first R-rated movie in the MCU, is great news as it is, because it's sticking in tone with the Deadpool movies we've had beforehand. But this is such an important movie for Marvel Studios in particular, because they can't do the same thing they've been doing with the last couple movies, because everyone's getting sick and tired of the shtick. You need to be, and the superhero movie fatigue is really starting to stretch in, especially when we keep getting lesser films like the Marvels and even Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and just recently Madam Web. But if you're going to do this right, you have to just do it as much as you can. It's going to be hard for me to say this because of what this is now a part of. Let's take a sip right there, but this can't be like the other MCU movies, where everything is like, if it's going to be like the MCU movies, you have to be able to satirize yourself, but you also have to have a plan for going forward, because right now, Marvel Studios right now is struggling to figure out what they're trying to do now, because, the big plan was supposed to have, Kang the Conqueror be the main baddie of Phase 5, but, of course, Jonathan Majors had to go and screw that up for everybody, and now they have to basically start from scratch again. And so really, there's a whole lot that needs to be decided on what to do with the MCU now, because their plans have shifted big time, and people are starting to take notice that, hey, these last couple of films, for the most part, have not been great. They've not been good. And the last couple of things you put out have not been well received on a number of different levels. But there's been a lot of good stuff that has come from this, but if you're going to do this, you really have to be able to adapt and figure out how to take this to another level. And I think Deadpool and Wolverine has the potential to do just that. I think Deadpool and Wolverine has a chance to really show that we can exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We should be allowed to make fun of ourselves, and fun of the MCU in particular, as well as ourselves, but also we should use this opportunity to get people to come back and experience what we're going to have with these next couple of movies that we're going to have here. Because, of course, you got Fantastic Four coming up. You've got another Avengers movie. You've got a new Captain America with Anthony Mackie as the Falcon now as Captain America, and there's just a lot there that has really got to come into play here, in order for this to really come together. This is just something that there's just so much going on in this particular with the MCU right now that it just feels like these next couple of movies, starting with Deadpool and Wolverine, are so critical to the future of the MCU. I mean, if they want to get back to that stretch of great films they had for 11 years between Iron Man and Avenger and Spider-Man Far From Home, it's got to start with Deadpool and Wolverine. You've got to find a way to bring everybody back into the fold and find a way to get people excited about the MCU again, because this is a critical point right now for them. Like, the next couple movies are really going to be a contributing factor to whether or not this universe is going to have life to it in the years to come, which it will, but will it be the way they've been doing it the last couple of years, or will somebody finally say, hey, we've got to do something about this, we've got to change things around here? And hopefully Deadpool and Wolverine will be the first film that really shows that they are really ready to believe that they're ready to move on and do something new and different with it. But we'll see what happens, man. But I really can't wait to see what they do with this. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine looks like a ton of fun. Trailer for it looked great. I already did a trailer review for it on the website here, so if you want to go find that, check that out. But I'm very curious to see what they decide to do with the Deadpool and Wolverine going forward. So with that said, let's move on to the next story. So, of course, the Super Bowl just happened last week. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs won their second championship in the last 2 years, 3 in total since Mahomes became the starter, and the first time since the New England Patriots 20 years ago won back-to-back championships. And we've talked about the Kansas City Chiefs in particular, especially at the end of the game last week. But there's still one more great tradition that comes after the Super Bowl that I feel like I need to bring up with you, and it's kind of a tradition that I usually get to look forward to after every Super Bowl, and I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just going to let it play right here.
Patrick Mahomes, you and the Kansas City Chiefs have just won the Super Bowl. What are you going to do next? We're going to Disneyland!
And of course, that is the tradition that happens every Super Bowl. The Super Bowl MVP, after they win the big game, they get asked by somebody, hey, so-and-so, you just won the Super Bowl. What are you going to do next? And then they say, I'm going to Disney World, or I'm going to Disneyland in this case. And then sure enough, the next day, they're automatically in Disneyland celebrating the Super Bowl. It's happened the last couple of years now that they kind of show up at the game at the parks afterwards. And this is now I believe this is now the 37th year they've done this now. And you might be wondering, why do they do this every year? Like, why has this become a tradition to do the I'm Going to Disney World thing? Well, I think it's kind of fascinating the way the story actually played out here, because if you go online and you find the story here, you basically have the story where Disney CEO at the time in 1987, Michael Eisner, credited his wife Jane with the idea for the campaign. During the 1987 grand opening for Star Tours at Disneyland, the couple dined with these advertising executives, Dick Rutten and Gene Yeager. Actually, I'm sorry, they weren't advertising executives, but Dick Rutten and Gina Yeager, who had piloted the first aircraft to fly around the world without stopping or refueling. And after Jane Eisner asked the pilots what they planned to do next, they replied, "We're going to Disneyland." She later told the husband that the phrase would make a greater advertising campaign. So not but a month later, when the Giants played the Broncos in Super Bowl 21, I believe, on January 25th, 1987, the first quarterback to ever say that was Phil Simms. So Simms said, "I'm going to go to Disney World," and he was actually paid $75,000. And John Elway was also paid the same amount. Was going to be paid the same amount in case the Denver Broncos win. And this later just became the tradition. You would usually have it for you would have it for the NBA Finals. The Lakers teams, the Lakers teams that won said it as well. The Celtics, the Bulls, of course, the Minnesota Twins in baseball. There was a lot of baseball teams that did it as well, and it would follow mostly every major sporting championship. And it's funny because in 1994, Nancy Kerrigan was recorded saying to Mickey Mouse, "This is dumb, I hate it, it's the most corniest thing I've ever done." However, she claimed that her remarks had been misinterpreted. She claimed that while participating in the parade wasn't corny, wearing her silver medal was because her parents had taught her not to boast or flaunt her accomplishments. And Kerrigan also went on to say nothing against the Disney company or Mickey Mouse, and said, "Whoever could find fault with Mickey Mouse, he's the greatest mouse I've ever known." And it's funny, the stories that have followed for this is very interesting because, Ray Lewis was named Super Bowl 35 MVP when the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2001, but because he was involved in a murder trial the year before, they actually sent the phrase, "I'm going to Disney World," to quarterback Trent Dilfer. And in subsequent years, Disney's actually reduced the price down from $75,000 that Phil Simms got to $30,000 for athletes and other stars to participate in the ads and appear at one of their parks. And there's been times when, Tom Brady won MVP in Super Bowl 51, and he gave the Disney trip to his teammate, James White. There was a little bit of a brief overhaul, there was a brief break between a couple years until 2006 when Disney decided to do the same thing, and they decided to air a commercial with the Steelers and Seattle Seahawks, practicing how they would deliver the famous phrase while preparing for the game. And they bought a traditional What's Next commercial for the Steelers' Heinz Ward and Jerome Bettis, who ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. And even though Peyton Manning said the famous line in Super Bowl 50 in an interview, they never actually did an ad in 2016. And in 2020, they basically have changed it all up as it is now because, in 2020, they announced that they were official sponsor of the game's MVP ceremony, and Patrick Mahomes announced the phrase, "Of course I'm going to Disney World," thus embedded into the broadcast postgame show, which includes appearances by Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, along with a 10-year-old Make-A-Wish kid. And during the parade at Disney World, they represented the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and the head of the parks chairman, Bob Chapek at the time, and the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, each is all announced, along with others, a $1 million donation to the Make-A-Wish Foundation in Mahomes' honor. And 17 other children also got free passes to attend the parade as well. So this is just something that, when you think about it, this is just what the tradition is. Every time the Super Bowl ends, or every time there's a big event going on, they have to do the thing where I'm going to Disney World, I'm going to Disneyland. Like, it's mostly with the Super Bowl nowadays, because there were times when they did it with other things too. They did it with, of course, the NBA Finals, then the World Series. They, of course, did it when the Boston Red Sox won the World Series, as did the Anaheim Angels. They did it when Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds had the home run records. They did it for brief stints when American Idol was still on Fox. Between 2008 and 2011, they had the winners of those events doing the Super Bowl thing. But like I said, it's been mostly now just relegated to the Super Bowl, and it's a tradition. It's a tradition that's become very familiar when you watch the end of the game, and then you wait the next day, and then all of a sudden, boom! There's highlights from the game that just happened, and somebody saying, "I'm going to Disney World," or "I'm going to Disneyland." It's just something you get used to hearing every year. It's just kind of like something that really, it's part of a tradition that really, I hope it doesn't go away anytime soon. It's just something that, it's just always something fun to watch, even after all these years later. It can be cheesy and corny at times, but you know what? It works. It works because it's only on during a brief stint of time during the last week of the week after the Super Bowl had ended. And you just kind of go with the flow with it. And I like these commercials a lot. I really do like them a lot. And I do look forward to watching them every single year after the Super Bowl. So, nothing much more on that one. I just wanted to bring that up because that was something that happened. The new commercial came out after I recorded the last episode. So that's why I brought it up. But let's go ahead and move on to our last story for the night. So we're kind of heading into the home stretch of the television season, which of course was cut short because of the strike. And we just had the Super Bowl, and now we're a couple weeks away from the last big event of the season, and that is, of course, the Academy Awards. And I've talked about it on this channel, I've talked about it on the other channel as well, that the Academy Awards, how do I put this? They're more of a job now than it is a necessity to watch the Oscars. I mean, I've liked watching the Oscars for years now, but every year it becomes more of a chore and a job to watch the Oscars than a thrill. I don't get that exciting factor of sitting there on the night of the Academy Awards, hoping that a movie I really like gets some major awards. And, you know, we've kind of delved into a lot of the things about the Academy Awards in terms of how, like, some of the Best Picture in particular is where I really have a lot of problems with the Best Pictures that have won over most of the last 15 years. I mean, there have been some good movies here and there, but every year or so, more times than not, there are movies that win Best Picture. And when I think of the Best Picture for the Academy Awards, I think of the movie that's supposed to define the year. Like, I'm supposed to figure the movie that was the best overall film, was a film that was actually really good, and wasn't just an Oscar bait movie or a cliched riddle movie that won the nomination because, oh, it got the buzz behind it because nobody else wanted to put one of these movies that should have won in that category. And there's been a lot of bad examples of that in the last 15 years or so, and actually longer than that too. I mean, I can go all the way back to when Fargo lost out to The English Patient, or Saving Private Ryan lost to Shakespeare in Love. Like, as much as I like English Patient and Shakespeare in Love are good movies, but I'm sorry, I like Saving Private Ryan and Fargo much better than those movies. Or in a year where Gladiator won Best Picture because they couldn't nominate Castaway, which was the real Best Picture winner, the real Best Picture that should have been nominated in 2000. But I'm mostly focusing on the last maybe close to 15 years, because we've had some of the worst Best Picture winners as of late in the last 15 years. I mean, one of the big ones I can think of right off the top of my head is 2018, when Green Book won the Oscar in a year that had Black Panther, Black Klansman, Roma, A Star is Born, these really great movies that should have won. I really think Black Panther should have been the year they should have won. If somebody said, okay, we're going to give this comic book movie an Oscar for Best Picture because we feel like it's the best picture of the year. Kind of like how Beauty and the Beast should have won over Silence of the Lambs. Like, Silence of the Lambs is a good movie, but I'm sorry. Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster deserve their Oscars, but that should have been the year that someone said, hey, Beauty and the Beast did something unprecedented that we haven't seen done with an Oscar, with a Best Picture winner, and we're going to acknowledge it for that. But Can't do that because that would piss off the other people that would... I'm not going to lose to a cartoon. Are you out of your mind? Like, that type of stuff. But Green Book winning over Black Panther, Black Klansman, A Star Is Born, Roma. Hell, I would have minded Bohemian Rhapsody won, even though I've talked shit about that movie, including a lot on this particular show. Like, I would rather have that win Best Picture over Green Book, because when I finally got to see Green Book, I was just kind of like, it's one of those movies. It's a Driving Miss Daisy. It's not even a good Driving Miss Daisy. It's a movie that is so poorly put together in terms of a story, in terms of the editing overall. It's just not a good movie, plain and simple. But won Best Picture, and I don't get why. 2021 was probably the most recent example of a movie that I thought, as good as this movie is, considering what else was nominated that year, I would not have picked this as Best Picture. Like, in a year where you had a lot of good movies, in West Side Story, Nightmare Alley, Dune, Belfast, Licorice Pizza, King Richard, The Power of the Dog, was Coda really the best picture of 2021? Or was it the best story that you could possibly have for 2021? Especially with that year being the year where Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. I feel like I'll never forget that night when Coda won Best Picture and everyone just did the thing from Coda, like the sign language thing, to try to make you completely forget the whole thing that just happened a couple of hours ago with Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. It's just like, that ship sailed, man. Especially since you obviously cannot handle the way is controversy like that. Like, I always love that about the Academy Awards. They want the controversy. They want everybody to talk about it. And they have the controversy and everybody talks about it. And then everyone's just like, let me make it about myself. Because how did I feel about this? I mean, who cares about the people who were involved in it? But let's talk about me. I mean, that's pretty much what happened the night that happened. But easily the worst ones that I can think of for, like, the worst Best Picture winner, I have to go all the way back to 2010. In the year where you had Black Swan, The Fighter, Inception, The Kids Are Alright, 127 Hours, The Social Network, Toy Story 3, True Grit, and Winter's Bone. These amazing movies. They all lose to The King's Speech, the worst Best Picture winner of all time. Like, I'm sorry, The King's Speech is not a good movie. It's a movie that is it's another one of those movies that we've seen done to death. It's an Oscar bait movie. And yeah, Colin Firth won an Oscar for this. Okay, so what? Like, I'm sorry, the movie sucked. It was a poorly made movie. It was not a film that deserved to win Best Picture, especially in that year when you had all those other movies I listed in there. Like, any one of those other movies could have easily won Best Picture and should have won Best Picture, but nope. Let's give it to The King's Speech because we're such on a streak right now with like the royal family, because of course, you know, this was around the time that you know, Prince William got married to now I can't remember her name now. Kate Middleton. That's what I was thinking of. But yeah, it just didn't feel. It just didn't feel like The King's Speech really deserved to win Best Picture that year. That was one of those ones where it felt like Harvey Weinstein had his hand in it because, you know, he owned the Weinstein Company at the time, and you know, he has to do the same thing he did with The English Patient, Shakespeare in Love. Heaven forbid if an actual good movie wins Best Picture that year, especially in that year. But that's just the way it was. I mean, this is just. That's the thing that I'm worried about that I worry about every year with the Best Picture winners. Because when I think of the Best Picture, I'm thinking of the movies that deserve to win and dignify the year. It's like the Best Picture should be the movie that defines the year in particular. And this year in particular, we have two movies that did just that: Barbie and especially Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I feel like, is the front runner and should be the front runner because it's the best movie of 2023. But there's that little thing that in the back of my head that's thinking that Poor Things is going to be one of those ones that is going to be that year where Poor Things ends up coming up and winning it, or these lesser movies that clearly are not as good as some of the best movies on this list for the year's Best Picture. But I don't know. Like, I just worry about with these type of things. Like I think Oppenheimer will win the Best Picture. It should win Best Picture, but there's just that feeling in the back of my head that it's not gonna. Is that something might happen? Like something like even if Barbie wins, I'd be okay with that. If it, you know, the Holdovers, if that went, like if the Holdovers wins, or Killers of the Flower Moon, or Maestro, any of these other movies, like it would be a major letdown. I'd just be like, Another one of those years for the Academy Awards where they just can't pick the real Best Picture winner, which should be Oppenheimer or even Barbie at that point. But it's just like, but I don't know. Like, Oppenheimer should win Best Picture. I think it will win Best Picture, but that's just one of those things where I can't trust the Oscars on that as much, because they always do this every year. They you think that there's a movie that's specifically going to be the front runner, and then all out of nowhere they pull a rabbit out of your hat and say, like, Green Book wins Best Picture and King's Speech wins Best Picture. It's just like I doubt it's going to happen again this year, but just got to keep that in the back of my head. But still got to watch the Oscars. Like I said, it's more of a chore now than an actual fun thing to do, because that's kind of part of my job here. But I just wanted to bring that up here. Nothing really particular wanted me to bring that up in general, but I just wanted to bring that up. But on that note, let's go ahead and move on to some recommendations for the week. And in terms of recommendations, there's not really a whole lot of new releases. I feel like we're in this pattern right now where big new releases are going to be coming once every 2 weeks now, because we have the Marvels and Hunger Games Songbirds of Snakes last week. And then this week, it's mostly just catalog titles, you know, stuff like, you know, Beverly Hills Cop 3 is getting a Blu-ray release for the first time ever, which I guess it's cool if you want to wrap up the collection, but which will probably be something I do, even though I really hate Beverly Hills Cop 3. But Darkman's getting a nice-looking steelbook and 4K restoration by Shout Factory. Something I'm actually looking forward to that comes out this week. The Hanna-Barbera Superstars 10 is getting a Blu-ray release through the Warner Archive Collection. Now, if you don't want to buy that set in particular, they're re-releasing all 10 movies on their own separate Blu-ray sets. So you can either get the Superstars 10 set for $70 on Amazon, or you can get one of the favorite ones on there for $15. Like, you can get Rockin' with Judy Jetson, any of the Scooby-Doo ones, like the Ghoul School, Reluctant Werewolf, Boo Brothers, Top Cat, Yogi and the Invasion of the Space Bears, Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, Yogi Bear and the Magical Flight of the Spruce Goose, Yogi's Great Escape. You can get most of those ones on their own for only $15, I think, but I don't know. I think getting the Superstars 10 box set for $70 is probably the better deal. So that's the one I already pre-ordered that one. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on that one. Platoon has a nice looking steelbook coming out pretty soon as well, this week as well. And then that's pretty much it for this week. I mean, the next week after that, that's when you start getting some more of the big new releases. Like Wonka's getting its release in 2 weeks on Blu-ray, and Curse One Migration's also coming out too. I could be wrong on that, but I think we are in that pattern now that we're going to be getting new releases every 2 weeks now, because I think Walmart and Target are doing the same thing now. We're getting new releases every 2 weeks. So I don't know if that's going to be a permanent thing, but we will see. But as long as I can still get physical media in any way, shape, or form, I'll take it no matter what the cost is. But or what I have to do to get it, I should say. But so yeah, with all that said, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Reviewing Network Live. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. If you like what you saw and you want to see more videos like this, hit the like and subscribe button. We've added a lot of new stuff to the channel here over the last couple of weeks. We added Time About the Movies episodes without the movie clips. These are all the episodes of the Time About the Movies, except there's no clips to them from the movies. They're just me doing my reviews for each film that came out for specific days. You guys seem to really like it, so I'm going to start adding more of them every single day. So be on the lookout for that. There'll be a new posting up every single day, and hopefully that'll add to the output of stuff that I put out on here. But some other things as well. Trailer reactions, of course, will be on here as well. But if you like those and you want to see more of those, hit the like and subscribe button. Check out the main channel as well. And thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time for the next episode, and I'll see you next Sunday. And until then, we are out.